Hey everybody, Script Doctor here, and I want to say thank you so much for all the outpouring of support on my 18 minutes of Zack Snyder trying to explain his work video. I know there's a lot of valid criticism out there because it wasn't exactly my vision. I tried to, and the thing is with what I was trying to do is that YouTube needed the video out by Christmas in order for their executives to get their bonus. So because I had a thing with the production and stuff, they brought in another director to come in and finish off the video. But it wasn't really my vision. You guys realized that. You saw through it. You recognized my the stuff I do with the stuff. And so what I decided to do is, with your help, with your support, hashtag release the Script Doctor cut, I managed to get the footage. I got the video in order. It's gonna look, it's exactly as I intended it to be. Got the right aspect ratio, got the right color timing, all the things that my fans really love, and just the outpouring of comments that you guys did for and it was just really fun, and I just can't believe that it made it this far, because it would never in a million years would I ever thought that you guys would do something like this for the work, for the creative, for the process of ideas, bringing the and just film in general, which is so important to me, and fans, you guys are what it is. So here it is, the proper Script Doctor cut of and I know it didn't take too long to do, because I've been working on it all this time since it was released. And to be honest, I haven't even really seen the original one yet. It's because it's not really my work. And then there's that thing with YouTube, and I really appreciate it to them. I hope to work with them again in the future. If they ever want to, restore the Script Doctor verse, or license it out to maybe another platform. I don't know, Rumble or something. Who knows, right? Who knows? Whatever. I'm not going to say no. But you should say yes to this, the Script Doctor cut. Here's the thing, and hashtag restore the Script Doctor verse.
And then we were saying that the way it was engraved was because it was a while that skull had been fought over, and different factions of whether it be religious or scientific had warred over the skull, and many people had died, and so some culty monk group had carved the different Kryptonian sayings in the skull, and then finally, when it was wrestled away by whatever factions created the Genesis Chamber and the sort of the construction of Kryptonian society as it is, we see it now, they were able to get it to the Genesis Chamber and start to create it. And I would say that there was probably in the other Genesis chambers across Krypton, there might be a femur or a little chip, just like saints, you might, get the whole skull in, in the capital there, you're going to have a pretty important piece of that skeleton, but maybe in other cities you get smaller ones. I don't know.
Imaginary, fictional characters, mind you. How many people did we lose in Metropolis that fateful day? Or was it a work holiday, this is year out, and everybody was out of town? I like to think of it as a banking town, like Charlotte or something. Nobody was working.
No, I mean, I probably... I imagine, that's a horrible thing to say as a number. You don't like putting numbers on it, but it's you have to imagine that there's people in these buildings, and we did. And I gotta say that, for me, it was, that was part of it, that we were like, no, there's real consequences. Consequences because we're used to seeing all these superhero movies and all this. And look, and not to say, not to compare, but if you look at Avengers, they like trash New York City, and no one even mentions the fact that like there's thousands of people dying in there, And I feel like for me,
it is about, that's why there's
like it's heavy at the end of the movie. There's like a sadness to the end of the movie. Like it's not just fun to crash around in a city, that there's a human price. And I think that's the thing that weighs on Superman, and I think it's important. It's not a thing that people are like,
they're like, it's danger porn.
Yeah.
He just likes to see buildings fall. But no, there's a reason. He's learning.
Let's not forget, he's fighting basically his equal. There's he has no advantage, in this scenario. Zero advantage. As a matter of fact, Zod's a warrior, has trained his entire life, can fight 100 times better than Superman. Technically, he's outgunned in that scenario, and he should lose. And whatever his human side or
whatever allows him
this, because he can make choices,
right?
And Zod can't. He's able to win. So I think that
excellent.
Yeah, I guess for me, because I was looking at it as a, sort of both as a singular story. When we said, okay, this is part one, really we needed. The nice thing about it was we didn't have to rush. We could take our time with introducing everyone, get to know Cora, understand who she is because of what's going to happen in 2, and then just try and make the story of her sort of finding a home really the kind of story of movie 1. Like her returning to Velt and having Velt be, for the first time in her life, a thing that she could call home, which I feel like for anyone is, sort of completes her sort of circle when it comes to her relationship to the village and to herself. And we know, of course, that's going to continue in movie 2, but that was kind of the idea of movie 1 at its sort of heart or thesis of it, Trademarks of my trademarks.
Trademarks of my trademarks.
Well, yes. I mean, I have a pretty, I don't want to say unique, but a particular point of view. I think that people have come to sort of see. I don't try and do it. You know what I mean? I don't try and I guess that's what makes it authentic, to some degree, because I'm not trying to go like, oh, we got to do this kind of shot because I'm
me.
So I got to get my kinds of shots in. I don't really do that at all. I just go like, oh, this is kind of like, let's put the camera here and we'll do this. And that ends up being, I guess, in some ways, the way that I do it. So, what those tropes are is I'm not 100% sure. Slow motion, I guess, what people would say, or, just this kind of big sort of tableaus that I like to do, things like that. No, it's a good question because we had this sort of basic story, because you can imagine that this sort of story itself, village, bad guys come, we want all your weed, we'll be back, we need to go find some guys to protect us. Pretty clean. So the work that we did right at first was, I was like, okay, let's just start with like the Mother World mythology. Like, what is their creation story? Kind of build their religious, and their sort of belief systems, and then from there figure out like why they would want or why they would need to, go out into space and in conquest. And I think that was where we started. And of course once you start to build out like that, it just goes and goes and goes, And we have quite a timelines, and now we have like all these Bibles for the different worlds, and it's become quite a crazy library of ideas. So it's really quite fun though, because we really wanted to be careful so that we could we wouldn't like contradict ourselves in the future. So we're trying to set our, the canon of our world needs to kind of be set, because actually in a lot of ways it all gets, you sort of start to see more, even in movie 2, more of it gets filled in of Korra's backstory and the world of the mother world. And maybe because, I decided to make them sort of feel like Scandies because I felt like, this sort of, these people that would feel like, that Korra would feel like an outsider to, but they were still warm, they're not like crazy. So they still accept her, but she's still the exotic other, even though she's clearly accepted. There's always a balance between, sort of entering a completely different culture and trying to assimilate how they'll take you and whether they'll actually let you in or not, and I think that was sort of, I needed a culture that felt
closed, but still open.
Closed but still open, and in some ways open, and that also, Sophia as an actress, has a exotic enough quality where she would feel like not like Scandinavian, So it was like those were it's funny. It's like just tricky. And I was thinking about Sophia for a long time, and so I was able to kind of build a lot of that culture sort of around the fact I would have her as the person who was entering this. Yeah, and I really wanted to make her this kind of not really that clean of a character, like as far as like what has she done, like she's a necessary evil in some ways for us at the beginning, but then we understand like that she also was a victim. She also had this kind of dark journey to get to where she is, and I think that right now for Korra it's just becoming sort of making choices for herself for kind of the first time, I think is a really interesting place to be. And that they have, in some ways, the village, the Veltians have no idea what they have in their midst. That's kind of really excited about creating this sort of like Knights Templar vibe to this guy because the concept is that the Jimmies were created to protect Issa, and that exactly what Hopkins says about, they designed these things with this belief system that was, if this child was ever born, we'd have to protect it. And so the genius of the design was, we don't know when this child's coming, but you have to protect the bloodline of the king in order for the child to exist. And so they are fiercely loyal to the king no matter what he does, because they just want the child. And you can imagine that and they've been around for 500 years just waiting for Issa to be born. And then when Issa's born and she's killed, assassinated, they really have a hard time. It's hard when your religion is when your God's killed. So it's kind of fun. It was really fun to sort of create these religious zealots that had no God, I think that's really, it's kind of a cool thing for them to be on this journey of self-discovery. Now that we have no religion, now what? Yes, I think it was an interesting balance that we had to strike, because I wasn't afraid of there being a reference, and I don't mean reference in like, I mean it more symbolically, because the movie is, it is a product of like the movies that sort of made me, sort of in the late 70s and the early 80s, the movies that sort of shaped my sort of cinematic language that I enjoyed. And so I didn't want to like shy away from it and be like, oh, it doesn't exist. Also, I felt like it's important in the pantheon of science fiction. Of course, Star Wars is like, a giant reference for everybody, and so I wanted, at least in whatever way we could, just even symbolically, just in some ways to comment on that relationship, to have the imagery and the symbolism commenting on how and what the pluses and minuses of that sort of, what that sort of iconology does for everyone, and like in the sense that like, it sort of sheds a light on what are
the limitations and or the positives of that iconology that we're all just 100% take for granted, because we do. Just Star Wars is ubiquitous. It's just like everywhere. It's like, like you can't like turn a corner without running into Baby Yoda. I think that to make a real hard effort not to do that really limits where you can be creatively. So we just said, okay, we know that exists, so fine. We're gonna just design things now just that we like. And we're gonna use that, our taste level, what we think is cool, and we're not gonna worry if sometimes those things overlap. I felt like there was clearly going to be some kind of at least mythological acknowledgement of Star Wars existence within some sort of design thing. Because in a lot of ways, I made the movie as it's a bit of a love letter to sort of, late 70s, early 80s kind of fantasy, sci-fi, whether it be Excalibur or whether it be, Star Wars or Empire or, Conan the Barbarian, whatever. There's a lot of that in it, sort of, because it's science fantasy, it has that. We don't really have any.
Sure, Jan.
There's no real hard science in it, it's like, how do the spaceships work? And about where it existed sort of in the cinematic landscape, I wasn't worried about it as much. And so we really, because then we just had to dig in and start doing it our way, and whatever kind of filtered through that was referencing those other films or other films, I thought was just us, our subconscious is just, it's in there, And so we try not to police ourselves too much.
Cool.
Way more brutal, it's way more, but it's also more bizarre. It's just more, it's more Verhoeven-esque, I guess, if you want to think about it in those ways. It's more RoboCop than, in the way that kind of uses violence as like another character. And we have, and also there's a lot of sex in it too, in the
R-rated version.
There's a lot of sex and a lot of violence and a lot of sci-fi fantasy. So it really, really heavy metals itself pretty insane. Yeah, I think it's totally very different because it's much more, because I think we spend movie one really, gathering the team and kind of getting to know the team and getting to know Cora and her backstory, who is she, what's going on. And I think movie two, now that we know everyone, can really take its time and we can sort of delve into the culture of Velt and understand the people of Velt. Meanwhile, of course, the Dreadnought's on its way, and then we really are set up for a big, it's more of a war movie, which I think it's much different than the tone of the first movie. And you really, and it, it has a much more, a bigger end. I was inspired by a lot of these films that sort of shaped me in the late 70s and early 80s, and this kind of science fantasy that really blew my mind, kind of made me want to make movies for one, and just kind of, what this impossible world that's out there, this massive, when you see, I remember seeing the trailer for Empire Strikes Back and just
What the heck?
And so it was a lot of that stuff, and as well as, and I've said this famously, but this adult illustrated fantasy magazine called Heavy Metal that I was a huge, that I subscribed to, and that was shaped a lot of sort of my aesthetics as a child and as a young teen and as an older teen, I guess. And even the animated version of that, the animated Heavy Metal movie that they made was really, also Star Blazers, the animated series, that was a big influence, and on. But really, that's the world you're going to sort of dive into. I think I've said that. Yeah, I had a pitch class in Pasadena at Art Center, and I think I said something about it's a combination of Dirty Dozen, Seven Samurai, and
Star Wars in space.
Star Wars in space, and I remember sort of pitching it that way, and my teacher going that's good. That's a good, actually, that could be good. And thinking, I wonder if that's true. But anyway, that stayed with me as a concept, through the years. That it was maybe going to be a video game. It was going to be was a lot of things. Then I pitched it famously as a Star Wars film. And then after the sale to Disney, it came back to us. And then we were going to make it into a TV show. And then finally I was like, let's just make a movie because I know how to do that. So that's kind of that's what it ended up as. It was a few things. Well, I just finished Army of the Dead that I had done for them. It was an incredible sort of creative experience working with them on Army. Army is a weird movie. It's a weird idea. Zombies in Vegas, it's whatever, you can't. But they loved it from the beginning, and they were really creatively encouraging and free, let me kind of do my thing. And then we finished that movie. I said, we can either do a sequel to Army or, hear me out. I have this idea for this sort of original IP, crazy sci-fi movie that's two-parter, and it could be like more. Like, what do you guys think? And they were very incredibly enthusiastic and very encouraging of the concept, frankly, that this could be not only 2 movies, but possibly more. And they said, yeah, we would love for you to try and make that happen. And so I went to work creating this world, and they've been incredibly supportive. Exactly. And I think that even just this movie, original sci-fi universe, scratch built, is a difficult proposition, I think, for the normal studios right now, as a concept. It's not based on a book or a movie or anything. You just have to trust that it's going to be cool. And I think that that's a difficult, proposition for the major studios right now. But for Netflix, they were very much let's do it. This is very enthusiastic.